Yes, hello and welcome folks. It's Chris here from the Ministry of Dice, back once again with yet another video in our Having a Brew series. If you're new around these parts, then the Having a Brew video series on the Ministry of Dice channel is all about team building, card combos and game mechanics in the game of Dice Masters. And for today's video, what I'd like to talk about is 5 Dice Masters globals that we think every player should try out. Now, this video is probably less of interest to seasoned players and more of interest to new players. If you're just starting out in Dice Masters, then you might want to take a look at these 5 globals because they'll help you understand the kind of deeper strategy and the deeper game mechanic that is Dice Masters. If you take a look at any championship or competitive event team list, you'll see these 5 globals specifically are appearing all over the place. They are absolutely fundamental in the team building and gameplay that highly competitive players use. And so if you're just looking to get started and you need a pointer around some globals to try out and how they may be beneficial to your overall strategy, then it's my hope that I'll be making a few suggestions in this video to get you started. That said, if you are a seasoned player and you're watching this and you're familiar with these globals, what would be super great is if you could drop a comment in the comments below. Perhaps you've got a team list that you'd care to share, a Dice Coalition team builder team list that a new player could take a look at that uses these globals well, or perhaps you've got a combo suggestion you might like to drop in the comments that they can take a look at. Or even if there's a fundamental global you think I've missed and maybe there's a 6th that you'd like to add to the list, then that would be super cool if you could do that to help any newer players who are checking out this video. But in the meantime, let's get cracking on and talk about the 5 globals that we've selected. So first on the list is Prep Globals. Here's a couple on the screen for you to take a look at. We've got Resurrection, Atlas and Villainous Pact, and these absolutely are fundamental to the game of Dice Masters. If you're not planning on bringing a Prep Global on your own team, then I'll bet bottom dollar that someone you'll be playing against will have one, so it's certainly a good idea to understand how to use them, even if you're not putting one on your own team. Now, in the first instance, Prep Globals are just a super clean, low-cost, simple way of getting an extra dice in your prep so you're rolling more on the next turn. Really, as simple as that. So much of the game hangs on your ability to generate more dice to roll in your next turn that a Prep Global that comes at a simple 1 cost as these do can just really give you a little bit of extra lift. So when you're rolling 5 dice instead of 4, you've got a little bit more energy, a bit more spending power to get things done in your go. Certainly help you towards those higher cost dice. But that's not the only way Prep Globals are useful. I'll be the first to admit that bag management is absolutely one of my weaknesses in playing the game, and so I rely on Prep Globals very heavily to help me manage the way I get dice through my bag and churn them through so that I'm getting the stuff that I want. The best example of this is in the first 3 turns. So often will I set up a situation where I've got 5 dice in my used pile in my second turn with an empty bag so that I can fire off a Prep Global, put the 5 in the bag, draw one out in prep, and I know exactly which 5 dice I'm getting next turn. And all the way through the game I'm striving to get 5 dice in my used pile while my bag is empty so that a cheap and cheerful Prep Global on one of these cards will help me guarantee which dice I'm getting. And with the name of the game being about getting your hands on the dice that you want quicker and churning through, this is just a really simple, powerful way of doing it, and one that even a bag management numpty like me can get my head around. So if you're just starting out in the game and you're just trying to feel out this kind of idea of how do I get the dice that I want when I want them, then try and play around with that kind of 5 dice rule. Getting 5 dice in your used pile while your bag is empty, and then using Prep Globals like these on the screen here now to help you reset your bag and guarantee which 5 dice you're going to be rolling next turn. It's an absolute godsend, especially when bag management could be so challenging sometimes, and I rely so heavily on these to get it done. Okay, next on the list, Professor X, No More Magnus. His global is pay a mask and once per turn field target psychic die in your used pile. There is so much you can do with sidekicks. They are just a resource that you can play around with, and a global like this will help you play around with it even more and find loads of really fun strategies with sidekicks. In the first instance, just the ability to guarantee a psychic in the field will give you access to a cheap 1/1 character that you can use as a blocker or an attacker. that simple, really. So early game, if you're afraid of what's going to be coming down the field at you and you need to get some blockers out, a global of this nature will help you get those blockers out. But it also combos up so well with so much other stuff. Sidekick related ramp is super popular. Again, if you have a look around competitive team lists, you'll see Mimic borrowed talent, for example, from the X-Men First Class set, who can target a die in the field, and then when a copy of that die is fielded subsequently, you can prep 2 dice, and you can target sidekicks with that. So use No More Magnus's global to make sure you've got a sidekick in the field, then field your Mimic to copy it, and then keep using Professor X No More Magnus to field sidekicks out of your use pile to initiate that prep of 2 dice. Super powerful. Or Super Rare Darkseid from the Batman set, who makes sidekicks swarmers. Again, get your Darkseid out, fire off a Professor X No More Magnus to make sure you've got a sidekick in the field, and then you're swarming for days. So it's super fun. Also, if Andy was here with me now, he would say that he loves to combo up Professor X No More Magnus with what's called Energy Fixer Globals. These are the globals that you'll find on cards like Billy Club and the Bifrost that allow you to convert a sidekick to a specified energy. Billy Club's masks and Bifrost is shields, for example. So he likes to combo those up so that when he's fielding his sidekicks, he can then guarantee a use of them as an energy fixer in the following turn to make sure he gets the energy he wants. So if there's a shield purchase that he's absolutely looking to make, fielding a sidekick in the previous turn, and then when he's ready to make the purchase, just turning it into a shield at the point at which he needs it, is just a super powerful way of both churning through, keeping your bag thin, but also making sure you're getting the energy that you need. Speaking of which, I've just mentioned about the kind of 5 dice rule, trying to get yourself 5 dice in the use pile when you've got an empty bag so that you can use a prep global to guarantee what you're getting the next turn. Now, Professor X No More Magnus is a super powerful global to use when you've got 6 dice sitting in your use pile. There's been an untold amount of times that I fired off a Professor X No More Magnus to take a sidekick out of my use pile and field it as a sidekick to leave me with the 5 dice that I want, so that when I then subsequently fire off my prep global, I'm getting exactly what I want next turn, as well as a handy little sidekick in the field that's thin in my bag long term, or I can use for other strategies. And finally, sidekick strategies. There's tons of stuff that use sidekicks offensively. You've got cards like Batman. You've got cards like Black Widow. You've got cards like Malekith, Karai, Charlotte Flair, all turning sidekicks into an offensive force, either by increasing their stats or doing ping damage. Oh, another example, super rare Jubilee from the X-Men First Class, Jubilee Mallrat. So Professor X No More Magnus is a super powerful global to use because you can actually combo it with offensive cards to turn the act of fielding a sidekick into an offensive strategy as well. So a super powerful global, one that can have untold amount of benefits, both in terms of your ramp and churn, in terms of your blocking power, and in terms of your offensive power, and definitely one that a newer player should be taking a closer look at. I suppose other than the fact that it's a rare and probably quite hard to find now, but we'll just put that to one side for a second. Right, next on the list, what do we got? Let's have a look. We have KO Globals. Yes, that's right. I love KOing my own characters. And I love using globals like Malekith here and Nihilor to kill off my own people for a variety of benefits. Now, in the first instance, it can serve a very simple function. If you want more energy next turn, KO a dice, it goes to prep, and you're rolling it next turn. And you may choose not to roll it as a character, but roll it as energy to increase your purchasing power and give you that extra energy to buy some bigger dice. So just in a very straightforward, simple way, it's access to a double energy dice if you so choose. However, there's loads of cards out there that have great when KO'd and when fielded effects. And so killing them off in your turn, or even as Nihilor will allow you to do, kill it off in your opponent's turn, is just a great way of getting those dice back in prep so you know you're re-rolling them next turn. So if you've got a when KO'd effect, brilliant. KO it, trigger the when KO'd effect. When you've got a when fielded effect, brilliant. KO it off in your opponent's turn, have it sitting in prep so you can roll it in and redo the when fielded effect in your turn. So KOing your own dice can be super powerful if you want to kind of initiate when KO'd game texts, or if you want to get when fielded rotated around and reused. Just a couple of weeks ago at the MOD PDM, I was using Nihilor Global loads with the Bobby Heenan that, when fielded, makes your opponent lose a life when a character dice blocks that turn. So I was fielding him, initiating his game effect, using him, and then KOing him in my opponent's turn so he was ready to be re-rolled in next turn. Stuff when fielded damage dice like Norman Osborn, Don't Call Me Nobby, or Firefly, that you can field, do the damage, and then KO them off and reuse them. And also often KO globals, if we give Malekith a closer look, it comes with an added benefit. Not only can you pay a bolt to KO target character, but it'll give you a discount on a subsequent action dice purchase, which can also give you access to more dice at a cheaper cost. So you've got added value there. Nihilor, not so much added value, but certainly Malekith, or the classic from back in the day in the Golden context, your Blue Eyes, White Dragon, Monstrous Dragon. So KOing your own stuff, loads and loads of fun. And if you're out and about and you think, oh, that sounds like an interesting strategy, I would recommend you take a closer look at cards like Black Manta, Deep Sea Deviant, and KOing villains. That's lots and lots of fun. Okay, so KO globals, there you go. Next on the list, Clayface, Restless. He reads, pay a mask. Once per turn, you may take a die from your use pile and add it to your reserve pool on any energy face. Super janky stuff, this. I love this guy. I use him loads in tons of my teams because I like being able to buy cheap 2-cost characters, get them in the use pile, and then use Clayface's Global to bring them into my reserve pool on 2 energy. So in that essence, I'm using it as a bit of a ramp global. It increases my purchasing power. One of my absolute favourite dice to combo this guy up with is Kree Captain. I like the 2-cost one and the 3-cost one, but if we talk about the 2-cost one for a second, I like to buy a 2-cost Kree Captain, get him in my use pile, then Clayface him in on 2 fists, and then use those 2 fists in the Kree Captain's own global, which discounts my next purchase by 3. So really super handy way of getting to 5-cost dice very early doors in your game. Before you're rolling that much dice, you can manipulate your energy. It's also another great way, I've mentioned it a couple of times now, it's another great way of playing the 5 dice challenge. Getting yourself 5 dice in the use pile when you've got an empty bag. You may not have a No More Magnus to field a sidekick, but you may have a Clayface available. So it'll allow you to pluck a dice out of your use pile while you've got 6 in there to get yourself down to that magic number of 5, ready for a cheeky prep global to guarantee what you're getting next turn. Also, the added boost of it gives you a little bit of energy to use, so you may even want to grab the prep global energy to use. So I've used that to control my bag. I've also used Clayface as a means of getting the energy I want. So in essence, a mask can be any energy you require. So if you are, for example, I used to play the Norman Osborn, Don't Call Me Nobby, and the Collector, Tainlevere Tivan combo a lot, where Tainlevere Tivan can field a dice at a discount of 2. I used to field Nobbies for a fist, and I used to use Clayface, if I didn't roll any fists, to draw in a fist, just a single fist really, from a sidekick if I had masks to use. It's also a great way of pulling in double energy, so I've used cheap mask characters and used Clayface to pull in, use 1 mask to pull in 2 masks, so if I'm using things like Static Field Global to push back offensive characters coming down the field to give me a thump, to push them back with things like Static Field and Kate Bishop Global. So Clayface, in the first instance, a super handy way of just kind of doubling up an energy. 1 mask can become 2 energy of your choice if you've got the right characters in the use pile. It's also a great way of helping control your bag, and it's also a great way of getting your hands on things when you need them. And there's loads of lovely other globals that you can then combo that up with. Okay, last on the list then, prep globals, and the example here in the modern context is Becky Lynch. This is pay a shield. The first die you purchase this turn is added to your prep area instead of your use pile. And in the golden context, this is on Rip Hunter's chalkboard. So for 1 fist, the purchase you're about to make, you can move immediately to your prep area. super, super, super powerful. So in the first instance, early doors is another way of controlling your bag and making sure you get what you want when you want it. My first purchase, for 3, I may choose to buy a 2-cost dice and fire it immediately over to my prep area so that I know I'm rolling it in on turn 2. Now this may be a cheap cost dice that's an energy type I want to roll, so I can use it for some supporting globals in my second turn purchases, or it may be a low cost character that I want to get out nice and early doors so that I can take advantage of its game text all the way through the game. Or it may be that it's a reactive purchase and that I'm looking to get something in my prep area that I can roll in next turn to deal with something frightening that my opponent has produced on their side of the table. Now, I'll give you an example to bring it to life. I mentioned Jubilee Moorrat before. She's a 2-cost bolt. She does a ping of damage whenever I field a sidekick. So with Becky Lynch, Professor X No More Magnus, and a Jubilee, I can, from turn 2, start dishing damage out to my opponent. I buy Jubilee and Becky Lynch Globaler straight into my use pile. Turn 2, I roll Jubilee in, field her, and then field a sidekick using my Professor X No More Magnus Global to immediately in turn 2 give my opponent a little slice, a little peck, a little chip with her. Now it doesn't sound like much, but when you're softening the ground that early on and doing little bits of damage that early on, it can soon add up. And there's also ways as you go on through your game to start maximising that damage. Again, in my hypothetical here, I might want to then purchase a Hope Summers and field her and copy Jubilee so that every time I field a sidekick, I'm now zinging for 2. Also, don't forget, I can use No More Magnus in my turn and my opponent's turn. So actually, if I can get 2 masks together, that's tantamount to 2 pings a turn. It soon starts to accumulate. And so Becky Lynch's Global is a way of getting to cheap stuff quickly that you might need for your win condition, but it's also a way of getting to cheap stuff quickly that you might want to use reactively. Or I'll give you an example on that one too. So I may need to intimidate out something or get rid of something that my opponent's got in their field. I could buy a 2-cost Gazer. He's a 2-cost shield character that intimidates. So with 2 shields and another energy, I can get him prepped up and he's sitting there waiting to be rolled in my next turn. I used to use prep globals to buy big cost characters very quickly as well. So I'd buy a cheap 2-cost character, prep it with the intention of not rolling it on character face, but rolling it on energy face as well, so that I had 6 spending power in my next turn. So I could spend 5 on a juicy 5-cost like my collector, for example, or my fetid bloat drone, and then use the remaining energy into my prep global. So loads of fun stuff you can do with that. You can use it offensively and defensively. And also, again, let's not, just the same as Malekith before, let's not deny the fact that Becky Lynch comes with an awful lot of added value just in her game text alone. So if you've not played around with using prep globals, we'd recommend you playing around with prep globals. Now, just one final note on all these. That's my last one there, but one final note on these. Please do remember that any global you bring, your opponent can use too. So one of the fundamental rules that a seasoned player would tell you about globals is if you're going to put it on your team, you need to make sure that you can make better use of it than your opponent can. So if you bring in Becky Lynch, for example, you've just provided not just the opportunity for you to respond reactively to things that your opponent's doing, but you've also given your opponent the opportunity to respond reactively to what they're doing. You've also, No More Magnus, for example, you may be using sidekicks to help manage your bag, but you may also have handed your opponent the opportunity to use sidekicks to manage their bag. So if you are going to be playing around with these globals, have a little think and get under the skin of how am I going to use this global better than my opponent can use this global? Is it going to benefit me more than it's going to benefit them? And if it isn't, you might want to think about how you go about structuring your team so that it does, or even remove the global altogether, although clearly this video is about recommending global usage. So yeah, put some thought into that. But ultimately, just to reiterate from the intro, these are a fundamental part of the game. They are what makes the game so engaging and strategic. Globals really add to the chess game of it all, and they're absolutely something you should be trying out. And these 5 really are the toppermost of the poppermost, in our opinion at the Ministry of Dice, that every player should be trying out. So there you go, folks. That concludes my top 5 globals every Dice Masters player should be trying out. Andy and I put that list together just over some instant message chats just the other day. But there's certainly more globals out there, so I'll remind seasoned players, please, if you've got any comments, suggestions or thoughts on those 5 globals or any you think I've missed out that people should be aware of, drop them in the comments below. If you're a new player who's just getting started out and you've got any further questions on those, again, feel free to drop a comment below or get in touch with us over at brickroller6.com and hit the contact us button to fire a mail over. Or you'll find us on social media. Best place probably is Facebook, facebook.com/the Ministry of Dice, and ping us an instant message and we'll get back to you on those. Also do the like and subscribe thing. Let me know if this is the type of video you want me to carry on making and if you're finding them useful. Please do subscribe. It super helps us out. It keeps the channel supported and makes Andy feel like he's valued. But with all that said, that finishes up this video. I hope you've enjoyed and I'll see you next time. Ta-ra, folks.